Jason, how do you feel about fortune cookies?
Too crunchy.
And now I want some Chinese food.
Is that the response you were looking for? You're wanting to know the level of crunch acceptance with fortune cookies?
So I heard a comedian one time say, and this might make some people mad. So, I did not say this. A comedian said this. So I did not say this. Okay. But he said, the Chinese people have one cookie, and it's the fortune cookie. And it's the worst cookie you can ever have. Like, it's the worst one. Why can't we have a better cookie than the fortune cookie?
Okay.
I like fortune cookies.
This is a comedian? Or just like some guy you know?
No, this is a comedian.
It's not really funny. It's not really funny.
It's not. I didn't say it was funny. I just said a comedian said this.
A lesser known comedian said something that was not exactly funny, and here it is.
That's the only joke I remember from him. And he was on like me and my wife watched some documentary or something like that with Dane Cook. When I used to listen to Dane Cook, I don't really care for him much anymore.
He had his minute in the sun.
Yeah, he did. It was about a year or two, and then no one could pay attention to him anymore. Anyway, so fortune cookies. This is not a show about Chinese food or fortune cookies, but we were having dinner a couple weeks ago, and we had ordered Chinese food, and I opened my fortune, and it said, if you're feeling down, try throwing yourself into your work. And we had kind of a mix. We had a brief conversation, me and you, about it. Mm-hmm. And there's two ways to kind of take that comment or that fortune, which, by the way, can we talk about fortunes for just a little bit? That's not a fortune.
They're not fortunes anymore. They used to be fortunes.
No, they're
right?
not. They used to.
Yeah,
I guess they ran out of fortunes.
Now it's just like mild advice.
Yeah.
If you don't feel good, maybe you should feel better.
Yeah.
If you have no money, you should get some. Thank you. Thank you, average advice fortune cookies.
If you're hungry, you should eat Chinese food. So they're like they're not very good anymore.
No.
So that's beside the point. However, I read this fortune, and I remember looking at my wife and like, yeah, I can see what you mean. But what really got me going was thinking about how hustle culture says something similar to this, right? Mm-hmm. You would hear people say, you just got to throw yourself into your hustle, and you got to give it 110%, which, by the way, you can't give 110%. You can only give 100% ever. You can't give more percentage of over the, you know what I mean?
There are many days where I'm struggling to give like 32%.
Okay.
I lost 68% somewhere. I cannot find it. That 68% is energized and ready to take on the day.
You did that math like that. You're like a math whiz.
I am amazing. I'm amazing at counting to 100.
Yeah.
Just don't even stop me.
Okay. We'll do a test later. I'm going to throw a random math equation at you, and then you have to get it right on the spot.
Okay, done.
But I think, like, going back to the hustle culture side of things, and I know you have a different take on this. A lot of people will throw themselves into their work, so much so, again, like we've talked about in the past on this show, that they'll throw themselves into their work so much so that they push everything to the side: family, friends, their health, their mental health, their physical health, like all that just goes out the window, gone.
Yeah.
And they throw themselves into it. And sometimes it's healthy, but sometimes it's not. And I think that's kind of where you were going with it originally, is like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with this, but finding balance. And so I'll let you go from there.
Yeah. So for me, I don't see anything wrong with that. There are extremes where it could be bad, but I think that there's definitely been times in my life where I got something going on, and like I just look forward to work because then I can check out for a couple hours if something's been on my mind, or I'm dealing with something, or I'm worried about something. Like last couple of years has been a really trying experience with the whole pandemic and dealing with losing a lot of family members because of it. Right. And there were just times where I was just, man, let's go to work, please. Let's go to work. Let's think about something other than sick family members. And I welcomed it. I welcomed the ability to just throw myself completely into work and forget about what's going on for at least a couple hours. But I realized that long term, that could be a problem. You can damage any kind of potential for relationships. There's just a whole multitude of things that can go wrong, health wise. Maybe even cause issues with work. Like, man, this guy is doing too much, and it can maybe strain relationships in the office because people get petty at work, and people think, man, what is this guy's deal? Like, why is he trying to show me up now? No. Maybe this guy who's throwing himself into work because he needs to be able to compartmentalize his life and have all of my feelings and emotions stay in the car. And then I go into work, and then I deal with work, and I'm only my work self. And then I at the end of the day, I leave and go. Maybe that's the best for that person, but people get weird about work. So, for me, I think in the short term, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's good even.
Yeah, I think, I can see where this could be a problem from hustle culture, but I think let's go a little bit further out from that, because I recently posted on my Instagram about my health journey and how I threw myself into just working out to the point where I literally damaged my nerves and my body, and that with a combination of just some external stress that was going on, just some life changes that were happening at a rapid pace. And I mean, you can contest to this. Like, it was one thing after another, these massive life-changing, life-altering things that just kept happening over like a 6-month time frame.
It was like when you go to the beach, and if you've ever been like playing in the waves as a kid, and then you get knocked down by like a really big wave, like, oh, that was a big wave, and you're like getting up, and you're like trying to get like the salt water out of your eyes, and then it's a really choppy day, and then like you just get hit by another wave, and like before you catch your breath, you're knocked down again. Yeah, that was you. Yeah, because it was
that was me.
I was like, man, let the guy catch his breath for a minute.
So I was like, I kept texting you like constantly, like, here's another one, here's another thing that's happening. And so my way of dealing with it wasn't to throw myself into work. It was to throw myself into working out, because that was working out for me is a way to clear my mind, right? Work can do that as well. Like, you separate yourself from anything that's going on. Sure, I get that. But I threw myself so far into working out that I physically hurt myself. Like, just in multiple ways, where it took me months to recover from. So I can see how hustle culture can do the same thing. And that's when I read this, Fortune, it was throw yourself into your work meant you block off everything else and you go head first into that. And that's the only thing you focus on. That's the way I took it. And I don't know if that's just because where my brain was over the last year and a half, 2 years, was throwing myself into something else instead of replacing it with something healthy and having a healthy balance. And that was what I posted. My health journey was, that was a balance thing for me, that I needed to figure out what that was, that I can't just throw myself into the deep end, figuratively and literally, into something that isn't going to fix the problem. And I think that that's where I have an issue with this is if you're feeling down, throw yourself into your work.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a fine line that we try and walk as you and I as entrepreneurs, as people in the workforce, business professionals, hustlers, freelancers. It's a fine line we walk to find meaning in your work,
Yeah.
and then having your work define you. So like, I think a lot of people worry that if they give too much of themselves to work, then their work starts to define them. So like whatever your career is, that becomes who you are. Like your whole reality, your whole being gets wrapped up in this job. Like you are your job. And it makes me think years ago, I had an idea for a podcast. This is probably before we even did lunch break. And it was just going to be a solo style interview show. And I was only going to interview, I'll just say it, I was only going to interview people named Jason. And I still might even do this because how cool is it when you meet somebody with your own name? I mean, it's not cool, but like it's interesting. It's like an interesting little anecdote. Like, oh, hey, yeah, I just met this guy and he's also got the same name as me. And my thought for the show, to never talk about your job, at least as your lead in. Because when you say you're at a party or something or an event, what's like the first thing you say after you meet somebody? Like what's like the first question?
Oh, yeah.
Or one of the first questions?
Oh, yeah. You ask, so what do you do?
Yeah. So what do you do?
What do you do?
What percentage of people do you think have career satisfaction enough to where they're pumped to talk about that? Probably not a huge
little
percentage, because a lot of people, when you ask that question, they're like, I work in data analytics. I'm a structural engineer or whatever. Like some people love to talk about their job. Some people hate to talk about their job. Some people like to talk about the thing that they're passionate about, which also might be their job, but maybe the job does not bring them joy. But like seeing success in that career might bring them joy or whatever it is. It gets all tangled and muddled. But my idea was to never ask what you do, let the lead be, what are you passionate about? And I think that's something that we should do as well, is just ask like, hey, what are you passionate about? And then maybe that leads into a discussion about your job and how you found meaning and connectivity between your passion and your joy and your career, which is like what we have done with our joint venture, is finding.
Well, with it, yes, with this and with this, we even have little small side hustles that we do on the side that are still separate from each other.
Right.
That also are in that same realm. So
exactly. So I mean, I think it's I think when you try and look at that fortune cookie you saw that said, recap it again. What does it say?
It says, if you're feeling down, try throwing yourself into your work. Yeah.
So for some people, that's where their passion lies. Right. And that's where they found joy. And that's where they found comfort, and they found acceptance. They have found guidance from peers. It's where they have found sanctuary from dealing with things in their lives. So like work can be so many other things other than just stressful and harmful and toxic. So, but yes, in the same vein, where your mind went to is, man, that's detrimental. Like that could just destroy your body. That can really just crush your mind and your spirit and your relationships. Yeah, it could be all of those bad things. But I think equally putting yourself into your job, if it's something that you're truly passionate about, or you just need that escape from dealing with things in your own life and just to throw yourself into it, I think that's totally okay too. But like it's all about fun. It's all about the balance. So
That's
You
what I was
know?
about to get at. Yeah, because and I think that hustle culture doesn't have that balance.
Right.
It's all or nothing. Go 100% in. If you're not in it, then you don't believe in it. You don't want to do it because you're not passionate about it. If you were passionate about it, you would wake up every morning and it would be the only thing you're thinking about when you go to bed at night. It's the only thing you're thinking about. When you do sleep, that is, you would be constantly working. Like that is what hustle culture would say and would agree with this fortune that I got from this fortune cookie. And I think that you got to be careful with that. Again, finding balance, and you can take it to any extreme. And like I said before, like, throwing yourself into a bunch of different things can also be unhealthy.
Yeah.
Throwing yourselves into relationships where they become clingy and they become toxic and they become like dependent on that other person to make you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
That's toxic. Again, going to health issues like obsessing about how much food you're eating. Like there's a whole bunch of spectrums that you can go down that road by throwing yourself into something. And so it's just a matter of finding balance. And if it is throwing yourself into your work, what go ahead and start drawing the boundaries that you won't cross. And once you start to toe that line, that's when you need to scale back. And that's when you need to back off just a little bit and say, okay, I told myself I would not go this far. And now I'm at that line.
Mm-hmm.
I want to back up a little bit. But most people, when it says throw yourself into it, it's like sink or swim, just go for it. And I think that's what rubbed me the wrong way, I guess you could say, with this fortune when I read it. And I immediately thought of hustle culture with that. Because it mentions work. So I think practically speaking, finding what that balance looks like for you before you go all in, throwing yourself into your work.
Yeah.
What does that balance look like?
I don't remember where it was, and I don't remember a lot of details of it, but I do remember reading a study several years ago, and it was talking about how it's like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people, like one of those like 90% things. Like one of the dentists, like 9 out of 10 dentists agree. But it was something like 9 out of 10 workforce employees would take a pay cut in order to perform work that's meaningful. So I think that yeah, you need to be aware of how much you're giving to your job, but at the same time, when you're talking about the thing that you do from give or take, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day, and then when you're driving home, you're thinking about it. On the weekends, you're probably thinking about having to email somebody back and fix some issue, or you're driving to work in the morning or whatever it is. It's you spend way more time at work and doing your work than you're with your family, your friends. So I think that when you're looking at trying to marry up the things that give you that you find meaning in, and the things that you find joy in, and you find a career that does it for you, yes, you should be very aware of how much time you're putting into it, because
Right.
as much joy as you can find from something, I worry that kind of on your side of the equation is like, I worry that you might burn out on the thing that you love. And then I would hate that. I would hate for you to resent your career because it caused you to not enjoy the thing that you love as much, because you put too much of yourself into it and you kind of lost yourself. So
Yeah.
I just think it's really important for you to, and we talked about this in the early days of the show, but is being very self-aware and
Yeah, it's crucial. Yeah.
yeah, listening
Yeah, I
to
think it
people when they're like, "Hey, man, I think that's enough. I think you can probably put your phone down and come back to the kitchen table while we're eating dinner." Like that email can go like another half an hour, you know.
right.
Um,
Or
so
or another day. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like
yeah.
you're allowed to turn off. And to your I think what you just said is self-awareness. I think that there's so many people who are not self-aware of things.
Yeah.
I think we're all blind to certain things to an extent. Um, but I think there's so many people who have zero self-awareness and they have zero
Mhm.
clue the way that they come across or the way that they communicate or where they can draw the boundaries. And to your point, yeah, I mean, I did lose. Like running was my thing. I loved running. I would go and run and run and run and run. And when things were getting tough and things were getting hard, I ran further and harder and in a new environment where I was used to running in flat spots,
Yeah.
flat terrain. We moved. That was one of the big life changes. We moved to the foothills of the North Georgia mountains, and everything is now hilly. Everything is much hillier now. And in my brain, I was like, I'm running a 9-minute mile on flat. I should continue to run 9-minute miles, even with these hills. And so I pushed myself too hard without having the self-awareness to know, no, you have to adjust for terrain, train for that terrain, and then slowly build up to where you want to be. And I think it's the same is true for work. It's not having that self-awareness to know, all right, I'm crossing the boundaries. And this is why I say, know where your boundaries are beforehand and give yourself permission to, if you are rubbing against some of those boundaries, back off. Just back off. And listening to your mind, like listening to yourself, like your gut, listening to your body just in general. Because I think, again, with going to the working out analogy, one of the things I failed to do was apply proper rest in between work. I mean, I was working out 6 to 7 days a week, and some days I was doing 2 workouts a day.
Yeah.
For no reason. And my body was telling me this is too much. It's too much. You're going too much.
Well, you were doing things that you could control. Like that's
Right.
when we turn to things like that. That's why we turn to work. That's why you turned to working out, because there are things within your control that you can absolutely take control of. When the rest of your life is kind of spinning out of control, then you look to those things that you can grab a hold of and say, this is how it's going to happen. I control this 100%.
You start looking for stability.
Yeah.
You start looking for that. And I think that, again, I think you nailed it right on the head with being self-aware and knowing where those boundaries are. And I think if there's anything you take away from this podcast, it's if you're going to throw yourself into it and you're going to go all into it, go ahead and write out where your boundaries of saying, like, I will, if it's work related, so I will not sacrifice time with my family in order to reach my goals. I will give myself permission to take breaks. Because sometimes, I mean, sometimes even if your side hustle, if you can physically take a week off or take 2 or 3 days off, or just, I don't know, take the weekends off from it.
Yeah.
And just step away from it. Write out what those boundaries look like. And if you're starting to cross those on a consistent basis, that's when you know you've gone too far. Because you're the one who sets the boundaries. Like no one has to, you don't have, I'm not going to set them for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
Zack, can you come take care of my boundaries?
But you know what I mean? So I think, I see your side of it, and I fully understand that some people need those escapes, because I found those escapes through working out as an escape. When in this fortune it said if you're feeling down, mine was just feeling things were out of control, and it was constant. So yeah, I think practically just figuring out what your boundaries are and making sure you don't cross them, I think it's the biggest thing you can do. Because to your point, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with spending a lot of time in your work and investing time in your work. I think that's a very, it can be a very healthy thing, but it can also be a very unhealthy thing. So on that note, we appreciate you guys listening. Follow, like, subscribe, catch us wherever you listen to your podcast. And remember, we are growing the Facebook group. We will be more active in there as well. So you'll see us around in the community more often. And as we grow this, we want you guys to interact with us. This is a way for you guys to have close interactions with us, as well as other entrepreneurs who are going through the exact same things that you are on a daily basis. So it's a great network. And here's the best part. It's easy to get into it. So we want you to interact with us and join this group as we grow it. So until next time, find that balance.
See you guys. Bye.